Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Smorgasboard podcast. We're still reviewing Wandavision, and we are on episode 8 entitled Previously On, which is a good title considering the fact that most of this episode dives into the past and the backstories of two of our most favorite characters, Wanda and Agatha. So we're just gonna hop into it, and the episode kicks off by giving us a little bit of a backstory on Agatha, who old school coven of witches. Apparently, she's been a bad person long before Westview, because her whole coven turns on her and they're trying to kill her. But little do they know she is more powerful than all of them and ends up absorbing all of their power and youth, apparently, which could explain why she is so old yet looks so young. So, good for Agatha. So, after our flashback to her, we jump back to the future where Agatha starts to take Wanda through a bit of a here is your life greatest hits of all of the trauma she's endured throughout her entire life. Starting off with, of course, losing her parents to a bombing courtesy of Stark Industries. So, first important thing to note here is that Agatha starts to kind of hint that, Wanda's powers were not just given to her, but that she inherited them, because she's asking her about the bomb that lands in her apartment and almost explodes. And she starts running through and telling her, like, no, it wasn't just luck or happenstance that bomb didn't explode, but you actually, without even knowing it, casted a spell on it and kept the bomb from exploding. So, big kind of revelation there. The next memory that they hop into is, of course, Wanda and Pietro's days being held as experiments by Hydra. And we get to see the very moment that they expose her to the mind gem and where her powers really start to manifest. And then finally we go to a uh, a, a memory she has where she and Vision kind of connect for the first time about kind of like their shared traumas of not really, of either losing somebody or not ever having someone special in your life. So we see a nice bonding moment between the two of them. And it's important to note that kind of through all of these memories, there is one constant, and that constant, of course, if you can probably guess, is sitcoms. So Wanda, when she's a child, her family always had like family TV night, so they would watch like the Dick Van Dyke Show and all of they would have this whole like catalog of DVDs that her father was like trying to sell to make ends meet. So they would watch stuff like Malcolm in the Middle and Bewitched and all of these sitcoms throughout the years. So we jump back to a little bit more present day, and we start to see Wanda's interactions post Endgame with Sword about Vision's body and trying to give him a proper burial. And the biggest revelation I think we get is that earlier in the season, director Hayward kind of said, "Hey, Wanda, like this was all classified, but now we're declassifying it so that everybody knows Wanda broke into Sword and stole Vision's body." Well, we find out that that's not entirely true at all. Wanda did show up to Sword seeking the Vision's body, but after Hayward kind of showed her, like, listen, he's not a person, he's property, and he's our property. Like, you can say goodbye, but you can't take his body. So she kind of has a bit of a fit of rage, but nobody gets hurt. She doesn't take the body. She ends up leaving, and we see her drive away from Sword, and she kind of drives cross country, and she winds up in Westview, New Jersey, where the show has been taking place. And we we see her kind of pull up to this lot where there's no home, and she kind of pulls out like a deed, and apparently Vision had purchased or acquired this land for the two of them to grow old in. So a lot of everything just kind of starts hitting home for Wanda, that she's lost Vision, she's lost her brother, she's lost all of these things throughout her life. And then finally, she just kind of up and literally explodes and just kind of forms the hex that is Westview now, that we've seen throughout the entire show. So once this moment kind of hits and we see that Wanda has created everything around her, including her version of Vision, that seems to come directly from her powers, not from reanimating Vision's body. That's kind of the moment that Agatha kind of puts a stop to the trip down memory lane and kind of reveals, like, all right, I figured out just what you are, how you have so much power. And she finally drops the name that everybody's been waiting to hear. She finally calls Wanda the Scarlet Witch, and we'll get more into that. And the episode kind of ends with that big revelation of Wanda being called the Scarlet Witch. And then this episode, like last week's episode, kind of had a little bit of a in credits teaser for next week's episode. And it's the revelation that since Wanda didn't take Vision's body, who actually has it? And it turns out it's Hayward, and he has the Vision's body, which he has been able to kind of reconstruct and repower using some of the like residue magic off of the drone that Wanda shot down a couple episodes ago. So we got the big reveal that the Vision's body is up and running. This clearly has to do with that Project Cataract that they talked about a few episodes ago. And then we get the final hard cut of the end of the episode with Cataract, I guess, starting to like move around and show some signs of life. So, lot of big revelations, I'd say, and a lot of impactful moments in this week's episode. So I'm gonna get everybody's opinions. Josh, what do you think?
I think this may be the best episode yet, and I know I've said that a couple of times already during this series, but they cranked the feels and the character development to 11 in this episode. I loved it. First off, I was very, very glad that we got an extended episode here. The actual episode, I think, was just under 40 minutes, and then it put it over 40 with the credits. So I was really glad to get a good chunk here, and it made sense because it seems like they're not doing the sitcom style from here on out. At least I wouldn't guess they are. So we're kind of back in the real world, so they can do a little bit more, and they don't have to stay to that format of being under half an hour for a sitcom. But anyway, absolutely loved getting some Wanda's backstory. It really filled in the gaps for her and everything, because I always liked her in the movies and stuff, but now I feel for her. Like, my gosh, this woman has been through a lot, and it wasn't just things that happened in Endgame, and I loved seeing it all. Overall, fantastic episode. Julia?
I mean, I'm just finally glad that we also got Wanda's backstory, but I like the direction that they took, and I'm sure that we're gonna go more in depth about it. But the direction that they took about how she was the one that stole Vision's body, so now like we are at peace that she didn't like go against his wishes, that that she loved him so much, that she was willing to let him go, but it just, her magic manifested. And then you see how she's not lying throughout the previous episodes whenever everyone's like, how did you do it? And she's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So like, I like to see that, because it would have been really easy to like try to form her as more of a villain if she stole Vision's body, if she's like putting everybody captive on purpose and all this other stuff. But like, this episode had a really nice like bow. It's like, yeah, like she really doesn't know how she did it. It's just a grieving woman, just a grieving superhero woman. But yeah.
Chris, opinions?
Yeah, I can't say much more than what Josh and Julia have, but
Cop out, pull something out right now.
I was going to say the only thing I loved everything from the episode, but I just wonder how they're going to wrap up this show in the next episode?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest question for me. I mean, there's also a lot of big questions, but I don't see that from everything that has came up in the show and in this episode. Like, they're still introducing new questions in episode 8
Yeah.
out of 8 of 9. So, like, the big question for me is, what do they choose to wrap up in WandaVision, and what do they choose to wrap up in Doctor Strange 2? That'll be a big thing going forward, because I don't see us getting all of the answers by any means in the next episode. So yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to unpack from this episode, especially with, you know, new questions being asked, specifically for kind of how the world itself works. At least that's kind of the big thing for me, because it's like one of the big things from this episode is kind of the revelation that Wanda is like, she was inherently like magical. Like, she had these powers, and the way that Agatha described it was like a natural gift that would have like died on the vine or something like that, was actually like magnified by the power of the mind gem. And that's really interesting to me, because it's like, well, so Wanda already had powers, and she used those powers to kind of like save herself and Pietro from the bomb exploding. So now it's no longer, you know, oh, she and Pietro just got their powers from like experimentation. Like, they're no longer science projects, essentially. You know, like, they're no longer products of mad science, but Wanda already had these inherent abilities, which kind of makes me wonder, well, does that mean Pietro also had inherent abilities? And is this kind of the lead in for the M word? You know,
Right.
is this
Yeah.
is this how we like segue into using the term mutants? You know, because like, oh, well, the reason that the mind gem worked on the two of them is because there was something like inherent in their DNA that allowed the mind gem to like tap into that and, you know, give them their powers, essentially. So that's kind of the big thing for me, because it's like, well, if Wanda is this mythical creature known as the Scarlet Witch, then like, what's Pietro? Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, it's like, well, how do you explain his powers, and how like the speed manifested in him? Because the Hydra scientist said something about, you know, all of the other people that they exposed to the gem like died, and they had like no living test subjects, which would kind of lead you to believe, well, there was nothing like inherently special about them or anything that the mind gem could actually do. Because it's kind of weird to think that the mind gem would actually, because we kind of just saw it being used to like brainwash people, essentially.
Mhm.
And, you know, it was, you know, it's the like the basic building block of what vision is, but the idea that it could give someone powers is kind of strange, you know, to think about. So yeah, the question for me just becomes, what is Pietro like? And I think
Yeah.
the only explanation is mutants.
Mhm.
Well, see, I think that is one part of this episode that I didn't like, is that they muddied the water a lot with how Pietro and Wanda got their powers.
Mm-hmm.
And one, because of all the stuff Parker was saying, but then again, towards the end of the episode, or at the very end of the episode, before the post-credit scene, you know, Agatha says basically that Wanda is like a child of prophecy kind of thing, where she is the Scarlet Witch. Like, her powers can only be, you know, summed up because she is this Scarlet Witch that, you know, she's probably passed down, like the legacy is passed down through like covens or something like that. And so then it's like, is she a mutant? Is she a child of prophecy? Did she get it from the Mind Stone, or is it just amplified? And then, if she's not a mutant, then is Pietro a mutant, or did he just get it? It's like they've jumbled it up a lot, which, I mean, they could probably take like an easy cop out and just say that Pietro got his purely from the Mind Stone or something. But it'll be interesting to see how and if they elaborate on how Pietro got his powers.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if Marvel was even thought, like, if they even thought about that whenever they were doing WandaVision, like, if they thought that would be a question. Because they
Yeah,
might have thought,
true.
like, Pietro might have just been an afterthought, and they wouldn't have to explain that because people were more interested in Wanda than Pietro.
Yeah, I kind of try to gauge like the amount of thought that Marvel puts into things, kind of based on like fan reaction to them. Because my primary source of global fan knowledge is TikTok. So if somebody's putting like fan theories or whatever on TikTok, I'll give them a listen. But coming out of this episode, nobody's really talking about well, how does Pietro's powers factor into everything that we just saw with Wanda's powers? So it does make you wonder, because it feels like it's a thing that you would think that they would have put the effort in to be like, okay, well, if this is how Wanda got her powers, then how do you explain her twin brother like also having powers? Like, it seems like there should be something special about both of them, with like their bloodline. But with Wanda having inherent like mystic abilities, Pietro's speed isn't magic, and I wouldn't describe it as being magical in any way, similar to like Wanda's powers or Doctor Strange powers or like anything like that. So it is weird, and I think that's ultimately the risk you run when you start retconning, things, and you try and do it in as organic a way as possible. It's hard to rewrite history, like, period. Like, whether you do a hard stop or you like go at it a little bit at a time, because that's kind of what, to me, this like WandaVision, it kind of, instead of just dropping like a full reboot on you, it's like very like slowly, bit by bit, trying to kind of rewrite some of the known things of the past. So before, it was like, all right, we know that Wanda and Pietro got their powers from the Mind Stone, but now they're like, well, their powers were amplified by the Mind Stone. They already had their powers, and they're trying to kind of like slowly fill in the gap. And it's kind of weird because it's like a gap that I didn't really think needed answering. Like, I never questioned Wanda and Pietro having their powers from the Mind Gem. It was just, oh, okay, that's how it is.
It was perfectly fine just saying, they were experimental and they got their powers. Like,
Yeah,
everybody accepted that pretty happily.
yeah, because, well, and everybody knew that there was the big to do with licensing and copyright, and Disney not owning the rights to use mutants, so they had to find some way around, like, okay, well, how do these two have powers? So, it was the best of a bad situation, like fans, I'm sure people were a little bit upset that they couldn't just be called mutants, and like a very long, rich history had to kind of be rewritten to fit the new narrative. But, ultimately it was just like, all right, this is the world we live in, so let's just deal with it. And now it kind of feels like they're going back, and it's like, now that we have this property, instead of just being like, well, these are two separate characters now, so we're just going to keep trucking along with what we have. Now it kind of feels like they're trying to take the old IP and kind of slowly start merging it into what they have. And I'm not 100% sure that's a good thing. Like, it's interesting, but I just worry that you run the risk of kind of making things too confusing, or leaving like major plot holes, like this whole Pietro thing. Like, I didn't think it would affect me as much as it has, but it's like, it is like one of those like weird, annoying things in the back of my head that's just like, well, what's special about Pietro? Like, I like Quicksilver, but it's like, what's special about him? Like, if Wanda's special and the gym like reacted that way to her, then how does he factor into this? It's like, what's the what's the connection? You know, is it their family bloodline? Is this how we get Magneto? Like, you know, work with me here, like Disney. Like you you just can't drop something this big and then like walk away from it. Like oh, it's just a fun little thing for the episode. It's like no, there's there's far-reaching like implications of this, and I need to know the fallout like now.
Yeah, and then it even further muddies the water of them bringing in Pietro from, from the X-Men universe, and them being, because you would think with them bringing him in, they're going to expand more on Pietro. Now, if they don't, because we know Pietro has just been, created by Agatha, like, if they don't intend to bring this Quicksilver back to the back to this universe or whatever, like why bring him? Like why do that? And then if they don't expand on like how Pietro got his powers, then it just makes that loophole even more noticeable and bigger
Yeah.
of them doing that. But I think getting back to this episode though, like starting at the beginning, it was really cool to see Agatha, how a little bit of her origin story, which I don't think we'll ever get like a full Agatha origin story, but because I still don't believe she's the big bad from this series. I think it's going to go more what like Julia talked about last week of her and Wanda becoming like student teacher relationship or friend relationship or something like that, than them confronting a big bad, whether it be Mephisto like everybody thinks, or with Cataract coming online, maybe Ultron. So, but it was cool to see like her background of, she's brought up to the stake, and you think it's just going to be like she was being outed for being a witch, and like these are, it was like a regular witch trial, but this was her coven that like brought her to the stake, and they're basically, her mother turns out to be the leader of the coven, and was like, you've been practicing all the dark magics, and that goes against our rules, so you have to be destroyed or killed or whatever they were going to do to her. And then she said the line of, I didn't break your rules, they merely bent to my power, which I thought was like a baller line for Agatha. And then she drained the life out of all of them, including her mother. But there was something I noticed going back and watching that scene, was the book that was in her basement, how it was giving off that like orange glow. While the spells were being cast on Agatha, that same orange glow was going around in the air. So I feel like there's got to be some kind of tie-in there. I'm guessing it's just a witchcraft book that teaches, spells and stuff to witches, which I'm going to guess Wanda's probably going to, if they do that student teacher mentor thing or whatever, Wanda's probably going to learn some more witchcraft and expanding her powers even more, which is a scary thought. But yeah, so Agatha gets a little bit of a backstory. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, my only like thing with the whole idea of them kind of having like Agatha and Wanda having some kind of like relationship like post WandaVision, like the last scene that we get of the two of them together, she's basically got Tommy and Billy. I always mess those names up, but she's basically got Tommy and Billy like in a stranglehold. Like she's kind of holding Wanda's kids like literally by the throat, So I have a hard time seeing them building bridges. I mean, it's possible, but because it's kind of where this episode felt like it was going, because it kind of felt like Agatha was in a way helping Wanda like face all of her trauma and kind of come to grips with like what she really is, because the whole time Agatha is kind of like hinting at Wanda like there is something like like deep in you that's, you know, the source of all of your power that's like brought you to this point. And it's kind of the conversation she has with her in the very beginning before they take this like trip through all of Wanda's greatest hits. She kind of like walks around and gives Wanda a bit of a like crash course in magic, like talks about, you know, like transmutations and controlling people and like using her powers to do all kinds of things. And then she kind of goes into, you know, manipulating like the fake Pietro and all of this stuff. So she kind of goes through all this stuff kind of just to get to the point to be like, it took me years to like get to this point, and you just basically rewrote reality in like a week, or like rather in an instance, and kept it going for like a week. So it's like they're like, Agatha is, which is interesting because this whole time we kind of thought Agatha was controlling Wanda, but it turns out she's trying to figure Wanda out. Like she's trying to understand like how are you even capable? Like Agatha, arguably probably the most powerful witch that we know about, you know, just by seeing like what she did in the beginning of this episode and knowing that she's kind of been pulling some strings behind the scenes, so to speak. But you know, she's still in awe that Wanda was able to do all of this stuff. And it turns out that everything that she's done up to this point has just been to get closer to Wanda, and interesting enough, in a way, kind of break the illusion around Wanda, because we all thought that, you know, like Wanda is well aware of what's going on and she's controlling everything, and Vision was kind of the one that we were looking at like, okay, he's going around and like the illusion slowly starting to get peeled back for him. But this episode for me was a bit of a revelation that like throughout the series, Wanda herself, like the whole thing has kind of been starting to get like peeled away, because that was Agatha's whole point. She was like, I got to you to this point and kind of pulled the wool back, and now like here you are, you're like fully like cognate and like outside of this like fake world that you've made, and now you need to tell me how you did it, you know. So like Agatha really, it's weird to even call her a big bad, I guess, for this show, like just because she just kind of wants to know how Wanda's doing, and one would assume that she's trying to like harness that power and use it for her own end. But this episode seemed more like she was more curious than anything, you know, about how like, well, because she even said when she found out, or she like picked up on, you know, what happened to Westview, she had to go check it out and she had to see what was the cause of it, because it was such like a huge magical presence in the world. So Agatha just continues to be more and more interesting of a character. So I mean, I guess it is possible that they could, you know, make up and become friends by the end of the show, but I don't know. It
After
seems like,
killing your dog and threatening your kids, it's a little
I
hard to.
mean, Wanda didn't care about the dog though. Like what?
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
be
yeah, it's
honest.
sad and it's messed up, but it's
But now she's
like,
got her kids though. That's the next
yeah,
level.
that's the big thing. She's using those kids as some
Yeah.
serious like leverage right now. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out.
But
So-
I also don't see Agatha like actually hurting the kids either, or having any real reason to, because from what I can tell, which is, I mean, it's a very small glimpse of it, is that she's interested in Tommy or Billy, whichever one is Wiccan.
I
You
can't.
know,
remember. I
whichever
think
one
it's
is like
Billy.
inheriting those powers.
I
And
think we would be able to keep the name straight by now, but
it's
Mm,
their names are like mentioned like sparsely throughout all these
Yeah.
episodes, and they don't wear name tags. I mean, it's just that's another loophole in the whole WandaVision show. But I don't see her wanting to hurt the kids. I think she's that end scene more to me seemed like she wanted to get a point across to Wanda, and what better way than to be like, look, I have your kids, you're going to listen to me and what I had to say about your origins and your powers and what they mean, or what I think they mean at least. So and I can see like starting off the next episode, or the last episode of Agatha talking to Wanda and then them coming to an agreement of some sorts or something like that. Because
Yeah.
I think the big bad of this episode is going to be Cataract or Pale Vision, however you want to call them. But go ahead,
Right.
Julia.
Oh no, like I was just gonna agree that like I think that their coming together is gonna be to defeat whatever is gonna be the big bad. That they're gonna realize that they need to team up. But I wanted to propose to ask this question. Okay, so obviously Vision is 100% a figment of or a creation from Wanda. So one, why is he able to have free will? If that makes sense. Like he's actively trying to get out and like Wanda couldn't feel him leave. Second, we seen whenever Vision did leave, he was being torn apart because he doesn't actually have any. He's created by Wanda. So what does that mean for her kids? Are her kids going to be destroyed whenever this illusion goes away?
That might be Wanda's biggest thing she has to overcome. She has to stop playing pretend, essentially, and get back to the real world and face the facts that they're not real, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's so Agatha, when she kind of starts going into like the origins of Wanda's powers and just what she actually is, she kind of drops the term chaos magic, which is kind of, I'm sure that there's an in-depth explanation in the comics of just what chaos magic is and how that factors into Wanda's powers. But ultimately, to me, it seems like the ultimate plot device in order to give Wanda like this massive amount of power to just create things, instantaneous and like out of nowhere. Like Agatha kind of made the point that, magic is a little bit of give and take, and you can't just create things out of thin air. You kind of have to have a basis to work with, like, especially when she's talking about, like, transmutation, and she, like, turns the little, like, locust or whatever into, like, a bird, and Wanda just literally formed, 3 people, basically, out of thin air. And I think in terms of like the vision, because like when it shows the scene of her creating Westview, and then she starts to create Vision, him being created is different than like the world around them being like shaped and formed. Like Wanda's magic, every time she uses her magic, you always see like the red mist or whatever that's like working around it. But when Vision was being created, it was kind of like it looked more like the Mind Stone that was actually like creating him, because what was coming off of her was kind of like yellow and goldish, very similar to the color of the Mind Stone. So since it did kind of amplify her powers, maybe the Infinity Stone plus chaos magic is what kind of, and Wanda's memories, the ultimate trifecta there, kind of all working together to create this new Vision that does have free will and is free thinking, but he just doesn't have like a real body. And maybe that's like the reason why he can't actually leave the hex and why he was starting to break down afterwards, which I wouldn't be surprised if at some point fake Vision and Cataract somehow get like combined, and
that's what I was about to
have
suggest.
you have new Vision, and maybe he doesn't have all of his memories again, but at least Vision is alive again and in the real world and walking around. Because I love Vision. I don't want I don't want this to be the end of him. I don't want this to be the end until Paul Bettany is done playing him. Like I don't want him to feel like he has to play the role forever, but as long as he wants to play the role, I say let him play the role, because he does a great job, and I am down for more Vision. So I'd say that will probably ultimately be his the closing arc for him in this show. But as far as the twins go, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a different beast with those two, right? Because like Wanda gave birth to them, and
Yeah.
Monica even said like, no, those kids are real. Like, she was like, I
Yeah.
was there when they were born. Like, they are real, like, living, breathing things. And, and she didn't really say that about Vision. She just said, like, those kids are real. Those are, in fact, real kids. So I feel like they're probably safe, but it, it's hard to tell. I think that's going to probably be a big thing coming out of next week's episode, especially with Agatha really, with that episode ending with Agatha kind of holding those kids hostage. Like, I think they're going to play a big part of next week's episode. And yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell whether they're going to have some like real longevity or not, post WandaVision. I thought for sure, like, oh yeah, they're going to, like, these kids are going to be a major part of like the MCU moving forward. Like, why else put so much emphasis on them? But now I just like, I don't know. It's kind of up in the air at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Like, I think their potential's like way too much to not waste them, but just to kind of let them their arc end here. But at the same time, it's like, man, we got one episode left. We got a lot of explaining to do.
Right.
Oh.
So something I wanted to ask you guys about though was kind of taking a step back to when Wanda her powers were being amplified by the Mind Stone with Hydra. When she was using the Mind Stone, or the Mind Stone was, she was interacting with it, she saw a shadowy figure for just a few seconds, and it looked like the comic book version of Scarlet Witch. It had like the kind of like horns with the like things she wears and everything. What do you guys think that's insinuating or leading to? Like, is it just symbolism of like, you are going to become the Scarlet Witch, you're going to fulfill, that prophecy kind of deal, like Agatha said? Or is this some weird, like, we know Wanda's super strong now, is she stronger in the future, and something with the Mind Stone? I don't know. I kind of wanted your opinions on it.
I mean, I think it's just kind of the first thing you said. I think it's just like her powers being like awakened inside of her, and just that vision of what she will become, and I ultimately, I think a lot of it's just, I think it's fan service. I think it's because I know one of our friends that I watched it with, he was like freaking out, and the imagery of the actual Scarlet Witch, like with the updated like costume, and like her helmet or crown or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is just that, like, it's the imagery of her really, like, of her coming into her powers for one, and then also I think it's just kind of like for the fans to just be like, all right, here it is, like, here is the Scarlet Witch, like, we've avoided saying her name for so long, but here it is, like, boom, there you go.
Okay. I just kind of wonder what you guys thought, because that had my mind racing more than a lot of the episode. I'm like, man, what does that mean? Like, are they going into some weird time shenanigans? Like, her future self, like, was the catalyst for her getting her powers amplified, or what? I just wanted your thoughts on it.
I think that's the negative effect of this show. It's making you like think like everything has deep-seated meaning that has to be fleshed out. So now it's
Heck,
like,
we think the mailman's the devil. Like,
yeah, that's great.
He is, okay?
He is.
We know the mailman's the devil, Josh.
Not
Check
thanks.
yourself, all right?
Yeah.
And just on that point, he was in this episode again. So
Yeah.
Was he?
wait, what?
I did
Yeah.
not
missed
see
him.
that.
Yeah.
yeah, whenever Wanda comes back to when she comes to Westview, first comes to Westview, and she's driving through the town, and she's seeing like all the characters like they've like interacted with thus far. He's a pizza delivery guy. He's like walking out of a building holding a pizza and some like other items. So,
Okay, I
But,
missed that.
which I mean, kind of takes away from him being the devil since he's in the real world before
Yeah.
she made it. But he is, I swear.
That kind of does take away from me thinking that he's the devil, because if he's if he's already a citizen, I kind of wish that they wouldn't have included him, and it would have just been manifestation, like almost like how Agatha saw this entire like magic, and like Mephisto's like ears perk up, like, oh, time to go. Like,
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think we're the only ones with the theory of the mailman being the devil. So
At least
I
sticking with it this
I
far.
don't think there's many many people out there who's going to like be upset about them putting the
Yeah.
mailman in this episode.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
only
I
the
don't
only
know.
mailman TikToks that I've seen are the ones that Chris has made. So
Chris, you make
no,
TikTok?
No.
no, it was very much a joke, Julia. Sorry, I got Julia got super excited there for a second.
My ears perked up, and I was probably like, oh man.
Oh gosh, yeah. So, yeah, it was neat to see like all of the like real life people around Westview, because I think that for me that was also a big question, like why Westview, New Jersey? You
Yeah.
know, like what was so special about it and the people inside of it, and then it just turns out that Vision planned like a lasting future with Wanda, which is very touching and also very tragic and sad, and ultimately was kind of that, you know, we've been talking, you know, during this show about like what was the tipping point, like what really like put the final nail in the coffin that like pushed Wanda over the edge, and it turns out it's the fact that Vision bought her a plot for them to build a home and a life together, and it's just, gosh.
And this
It's
is literally just her envisioning what their life would have been together.
Yeah.
I bawled like a baby. I will be the first one to say it. Like, I was sitting next to Josh with like, you know, just like sobbing, and I'm like, I don't like what this is doing to me.
Yeah, I'm really ready for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I can't handle these feelings anymore. Like
That's how I feel about the
Yeah.
Loki show. I'm
Yeah.
like, I need some God of Mischief to come up in here.
I need some butt kicking and some sarcasm and like some buddy cop moments. Like I need a feel good show after this, because this show is just so just gut punches you every week with something new, it seems like. And this episode was extraordinarily emotional, you know, between seeing Wanda and Pietro as kids and interacting with their parents. I did see something funny where you know, when Wanda and her family are getting ready for like the TV night, and she says something along the lines of like, "I want to watch like the special show." And to her, that was like the Dick Van Dyke Show. And her dad's like, "All right, well, we have to go to the special place and get it." And Wanda's mom covers her eyes, like she's standing behind her and she covers her eyes, and it's kind of a callback to like the first episode when they were doing the like traditional like Sokovian like greeting or whatever. Like I
Yeah.
saw a TikTok about that, and I thought that was really sweet. I was like, "No, stop." I can't deal with any more of
I
these
didn't
like
even
warm
realize
fuzzy
I didn't
feelings.
catch that either.
Well, it's like I didn't think about it either, but then like I just saw like a TikTok about it. Somebody was just like, her mom did the Sokovia like greeting thing, and I was like, just stop, internet, please. Like the show doesn't need your help to be emotional. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh god,
like I felt for Wanda this whole show, and you know, before WandaVision, because of all the trauma Wanda has went through. But then this episode really makes it. If you didn't feel for Wanda before, you have no choice after this episode.
absolutely.
Because we see her childhood, and then another big scene is her and Vision. You know, whenever she's at the Avengers compound, and Vision like is like spying on her in a sense. It comes out of the wall, and you know they're sitting in the room, and she's like, she's just telling like Vision her story and everything, and that's when they first like get to know each other, and then so, it's a powerful episode, and like you said at the end, whenever, well, before she gets to Westview, and she goes and talks to, you know, she goes to the sword compound where Vision's body's being kept, and you know she sees them like, which dick move by Hayward.
Oh.
It really, God,
Oh,
I
man.
hate Hayward
That
after this
scene made me
episode.
so angry.
And-
Cheesy villain.
And he's just pointing down and being like, "Look what we're doing to him," kind of thing. Because he was trying to get that spark out of her to try to like reanimate Vision.
Oh, absolutely.
But when she like has enough of it, and she goes down there and she like touches Vision's forehead, and she's like, I don't feel you anymore. So she knows like he's not like this is just a pile of vibranium. It's not Vision. And then she goes to Westview and pulls out that deed and has like a heart and says Wanda and Vision and or to our future and others. And it's just like
yeah, this episode just didn't stop with like beating you
Ugh.
over the head with the emotional stick. Like it was just going hard, and that whole scene. Like I know Hayward's like the bad guy, or they're setting him up as like a bad guy character, you know. But it's like, could his bedside manner be like any worse? Like here's a woman and like she's grieving, and he's like still treating Vision like he's just like a pile, like he wasn't a living, breathing thing. Like, well, you know, you get what I mean. Like he was a sentient thing. Like he was his own person. You know, like you can't take that away from him. He had a personality and he had hopes and dreams just like any other person, and he's just treating him like he's a piece of technology. Because he said something, you know, like he said something
we
to the
can't just
effect
let
of
$3 trillion of vibranium walk
Yeah.
out the door, and it's like,
and he was
Whenever he
saying,
did that, I wanted to punch him in the face.
"Oh
I'm like-
God, I know."
I'm like, how dare you? Vision is priceless.
And he said something to the extent of like not everyone, like because she wanted to take the body, and he did say that, but he was also like not everyone has the power to bring their soulmate back online, and instead of saying back to life, and when because he kind of caught himself after that, I think he like restated it that way, but at first he said like, you know, you can't just bring him back online, and she looked at him like, stop talking about him like he's, you know, like your desktop computer, like he's not just a machine, like he's more than that. And that whole scene, I was waiting for the shoe to drop and for Wanda to just go off like she apparently did in the video that he originally showed to like everybody at Sword. I was waiting for that moment for him to get his comeuppance, and then it turns out no, Wanda's like more level-headed than anybody in that whole facility, and she just walks out and leaves and goes for a drive to try and clear her head. I mean, I was disappointed that she didn't just like throw him through a wall, because I was ready for him to like get the butt whooping that he's had coming to him for a long time. Oh gosh,
I'll come out and say it. I forgive Agatha more for killing Sparky than I do for Hayward
Yeah.
being
Yes.
a total just
I mean,
douche to Wanda in that.
Yeah.
Like,
because who's to say the dog's even real? Maybe it was a fake dog.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
apologizing.
It's- well,
I'm an Agatha apologist, but screw Hayward, man.
well,
I mean,
you know, I was just gonna say.
maybe
Go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. No, like I was just gonna say, like that could have also just been Agatha trying to get more of a rise out of Wanda and her trying to see her chaos magic in action. Like,
We're justifying puppy homicide right now. Just because we hate Hayward more than we hate Agatha. I don't think any of us hate Agatha. I think we all
No.
actually really like Agatha. But Hayward, gosh, I want him to just. Ugh.
and like I said last week, I don't believe that Agatha's the villain. Even though she killed Sparky, I don't think she's the villain. But sorry,
gosh.
go on, Josh.
I don't want her to be the villain.
I don't want her to be the villain.
I hope at the end of all this, Hayward gets his comeuppings in just a solid right hook from Jimmy Woo.
Oh,
Oh man. I hope
Jimmy
he-
Woo carrying his coffee.
Oh gosh, I hope he just decks him. I hate Hayward so much right now.
he walks up to him and he flips a card and he's like, "Eyes on the hands," and then the right hook.
Oh gosh. Jimmy Woo reveals that he actually is magic, and he pulls out like a sling ring and like opens up like a dimension and just like decks Hayward, and he topples into it. Gosh, yeah. Talk about fantasy booking now. I really want to see Jimmy beat the crap out of Hayward.
Oh,
Oh
God.
gosh.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
so
say that with Agatha, like she may not be the villain, or she may be the villain in the end of this, but either way, she had a soft spot in her heart for Wanda because after seeing Wanda's story, she did shed a tear, and she had that I think was the best line in the episode. What was it? She said something to the effect of, "What is grieving except love preserve or persevering?"
Mhm.
And I was
yeah,
like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. And I've seen that a lot on social media and stuff. And I'm like, ooh, every time I see it, I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, man, she had a soft spot. She understood grief, too. She wasn't completely heartless. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still keep going back to that puppy murder though.
yeah.
Like, but yeah, gosh, this show, man,
It's been a roller
I'm telling you,
coaster. It's been
it
a
has
roller
So
been,
coaster.
yeah.
and I'm hoping that we'll have. I know that obviously everything's not gonna get like summed up perfectly with the end of it, because obviously they're gonna want to like leave some stuff open for future shows and movies. But I hope that this show has a very satisfying ending, because it's had very few like low points for me. The
Yeah.
show has primarily just been like hitting all of the right notes, and I hope that it continues to do that into the finale. You know.
Mhm.
So I think the last thing that we should probably talk about here is that end credits little stinger there showing Cataract. We've kind of talked about him a little bit, but it's looking like next week Sword is going like full on attack mode, and they're going to send him into the Hex, which is going to be interesting. One would assume that since he's kind of powered by Wanda's chaos magic, that he's not going to be affected by going into the Hex, that he's just going to be able to kind of like walk through it without any issues. So I'm kind of foreseeing the 3 big fight scenes kind of happening next week. And for me, that fight is going to be like, I feel like Wanda and Agatha are going to throw down a little bit, because how can they not, with Agatha literally like choking the life out of her children. And then we didn't see this episode Fietro or Monica. So again, we know from like the stinger last week that he caught her kind of snooping around. So I hope it's not as throwaway. It's just like he captures her, like he keeps her somewhere until like everything's all said and done. Like I want to see some throwdown. Like I want to see Monica's powers and really see what she can do with those. So I would like to see a fight scene between like the two of those, and then I think finally I would like to see kind of a showdown between Vision and Cataract, because similar powers, same body. Gonna be interesting to see how. I'm kind of interested to see the personality that Cataract's gonna have, if any. Because I wonder if he's just gonna be like a blank slate, like just a tool, or if he's gonna kind of have his own personality and feelings, kind of similar to what Vision was like. Still, more questions
Yeah.
with every
Like,
episode, even this close to the end.
if it comes up in the final episode that Pale Vision or Cataract, whatever we want to call him, is like Ultron, like if some semblance of like Ultron pops up, and like Ultron does come back in the next episode, I really would have liked for them to, in that end credit scene of this one, to whenever he powered up, we heard just something like some
Mm,
of the voice of Ultron, just like, even if it was like a groan or something that we could have like pieced together, that would have set this episode
Sound
Oh
over the
my
top.
engineers, sound engineers on TikTok going crazy, trying to
Like,
match grumbles, pulling like audio from James Spader's various like roles and trying to like match pitch and tone.
mhm.
Like it's him, it's his grumbles, we know it.
Like that would have, if Ultron does end up coming back, then that would have been awesome for this episode. But yeah. So I have a feeling that he's just going to be like a blank slate, though, He's
Yeah.
not going to say anything. He's just going to give like those weird like head tilts and looks of like whatever he's doing. He's just going to take commands from Hayward kind of thing. Because I mean, at Vision's root, without the Mind Stone, he's just a robot. So, I mean, he's a very synthetically enhanced,
Very
made
sophisticated.
vibranium robot. But yeah, like the body that they have was what Ultron saw as his perfect form. So he's not just some regular robot by any means, but it is something that can be manipulated as a robot.
Yeah, I think at most if he does speak, he'll probably just have like your generic like robot voice and say, your catchphrases like target acquired or like affirmative. Like he'll say like the trophy robot things at best probably. But I'm still excited to kind of see how that's gonna play out. Vision literally being like brought face to face with himself essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just like that's going to be a big part of this next episode is how they interact with Cataract or what Cataract does. But also, we still have to get how this show ties into Doctor Strange too. And I don't see anything that robot's going to do to
Right.
rip a hole in the multiverse.
Yep.
Or, I mean, maybe he offs Tommy and Billy, and that makes Wanda go mad, and she tears a hole in the multiverse, or something. But I don't see I feel like they're going to build this character up, and then it's just going to be like a quick swat of the hand, and then he's down, and then something's going to happen and tear open the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope that's not what happens, but I don't see where all of this ties into Doctor Strange 2. And I mean,
Yeah.
I have high expectations for them to do something really off the wall and tying it in, and I know that they can do it. It's just I don't see, as of right now, episode 8 of them tying this into Doctor Strange 2.
So
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Julia.
Oh no, I just want to say my theory, my big
Go for it.
end all be all theory, and if I'm right, I will. I don't know. Okay, so I think that whenever we see like the Cataract and Vision, there's of course going to be a fight, but I think that ultimately that the fabricated Vision's going to just be gone, because I mean Wanda can't keep him forever. But I think that with Wanda's becoming more into the chaos magic, I think it's highly possible that we will get Vision back in this doppelganger's body just because of her power of the Mind Stone. But I feel like that Billy might be the one. Well, okay, I'm going to say it with confidence. Billy will be the one that rips a hole and creates the multiverse, because he's still a child. He doesn't know how to really control his powers. He's made from chaos. And I think that he's going to see or feel threatened by his dad Vision, and maybe in his split moment he's going to lose control, because we see that Wanda is pretty stable even after seeing Vision's body in pieces. That was really stable. But she turned in, just seeing the houses whenever she snapped. So I feel like that with Billy not being as trained, he will be the one.
So if Cataract were to take out Vision, and then him seeing his dad, from what he seeing his dad Vision, fake Vision, manifest, whatever you want to call him, dying, he explodes with emotion and tear that. That's
interesting. Theory. Yeah, I hadn't thought about Billy being the one.
That's my theory.
Yeah, I think Yeah, because we kind of talked earlier about how, like, oh, maybe Vision will get put in Cataract's body, but I think the more likely scenario here could be that Cataract is just going to straight up, like, kill, Wanda's created Vision, and then, that could lead to either Billy or Wanda herself even, like, exploding, or both, you
Mm.
know? One chaos magic is bad, two is infinitely worse, apparently. So, you know, their combined grief could lead to, the multiverse getting ripped open. And another thing that I think should point out, I think it's a very serious possibility that there won't be a direct tie-in to the madness of the multiverse. I know, like, we've kind of been speculating that throughout this show, but I feel like just kind of knowing Marvel's, like, history, and every time we've waited for something big to happen and then it doesn't, or it happens in a way that we weren't expecting, I feel like it's not going to be so heavy-handed as, like, walking away and being like, oh, that's the moment. Like, I feel like there will be something big that happens in the finale, but I feel like we won't have that connection to, like, the madness of the multiverse until that movie actually comes out, and it actually, like, pulls the strings together and shows, like, hey, this is how it's connected, like, leading up into the movie, when some of the plot gets leaked, or, in interviews the director gives, like, a synopsis or whatever, I'm sure then it'll start to become clear. But I think it's entirely a possibility that it's like this show will end and we'll have no idea how it leads into, like, the future, because, like, all we really know is that Elizabeth Olsen is going to be in Madness of the Multiverse, and that was,
Yeah.
like, enough for all of us to be like, well, clearly there has to be some connection between this show and that movie. And I don't think we really left room for the idea that, like, or it won't,
Or
not,
she's just gonna be there.
yeah, or maybe she's just there for some reason, or maybe he needs her chaos magic for something. I think we're putting a lot of eggs in the basket of Wanda is the cause of the multiverse getting ripped open, because that's kind of where it felt like it was leading, with her kind of mental state deteriorating. But now I would say that this is probably the most, like, together Wanda's been in a long time now, after facing her past and kind of coming to the realization of what she is and what her powers really are, and maybe coping with some of this stuff to some extent. And who knows, maybe Agatha will kind of help her keep it all in check, and she won't be the cause of any kind of severe magical thing happening, or maybe it's the exact opposite and Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be in the season finale. Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't
It's
that be
really,
awesome?
Yeah.
oh,
Well, I mean,
come on, like,
we're still supposed to get a big cameo or a
was
big
that
star
not
appearance.
just Evan Peters? Is there still, like,
No, this was after the Evan Peters
Yeah.
episode.
Oh,
that
really?
Elizabeth
Ooh.
Olsen
Okay,
said
then.
that we're still due for a big appearance in this. So
Ultron.
All right. Well, I was about to say to
I
close
mean,
this
that could
out.
be anything. But
To close this out, let's take bets. Who do you think the big cameo is going to be? Josh, you first.
My money is on Doctor Strange showing up. So here's my predictions. I think we're going to see Doctor Strange in the finale. I think the multiverse is going to get blown open by Scarlet Witch herself. I think those two things are going to happen. That's my theories.
All right, Julia, what do you think?
Ultron.
Yeah, I
I
think
think because I think that Ultron would be more of a surprising oh crap than seeing Doctor Strange, just
Yeah.
because he's alive and we know he's alive. But like we last seen Ultron in Avengers 2, so I think
Yeah.
that would be more of a wow factor. And you guys know my theory, so I won't tell you
Yeah.
how I.
And Wanda has a clear connection with Ultron too.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think I've got to go with Ultron as well, just because, kind of like what I just said, like, it feels maybe a little too obvious to me for this to, like, go, like, straight into the Doctor Strange movie, and I just the Ultron thing at first was kind of a Hail Mary. Like I saw a few things about people talking about it, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Then it's like the more that the show goes on, the more I'm like, it's becoming a little bit compelling, and Julia's already had 2 theories come true so far with Monica getting powers and hunting down old Agatha Harkness. So I'm betting on Ultron.
Disney, hit me up. I will gladly do your research.
Boom. There you go. All right, Chris. Who you got?
I think we'll have to side with Josh here of it being Doctor Strange. I don't know. I really like Julia's theory of Billy or Tommy, whichever one it is,
Yeah.
blowing out, blowing a hole in the multiverse, and then we just see that ring portal pop up and Doctor Strange pop through and just being like, "Do you have any idea what you have done?" or something like that along those lines, or "What have you done?" Like, I feel like it's going to be very straightforward and heavy-handed who the cameo or the appearance is.
Oh yeah.
So, and I think that's like one of the most straightforward ways of doing it is it being Doctor Strange, since we know Elizabeth Olsen and Scarlet Witch is going to be in the Doctor Strange 2 movie, whether it be how Parker said it's not related to WandaVision at all, or it's directly related to WandaVision. We know she's going to be in it, so I feel like Doctor Strange is the easier answer for this, and that's what I'm going to go with my prediction on.
Okay.
Watch
You
Disney
guys are-
pull a fastball, and it's just you get a little bit of an Ultron tease. You get the cameo of Doctor Strange. You get the multiverse
They
blowing
do
open.
both.
Just layer it on.
Mephisto coming as
Yeah.
reveal man.
You get a
Yeah.
cameo. You get a cameo.
Yeah,
Satan,
I mean,
you get a cameo.
we did talk about the possibility of future Marvel franchises kind of, instead of having one like continuous story that kind of has like the beginning and the end, it kind of branching off into like the potential for having like multiple villains across like different genres, so to speak. Having like the Mephisto be your magical bad guy, having Ultron be your like tech bad guy, and then maybe in the future like having somebody like out in like Galactus being your like space bad guy. Having all of these different running storylines, because with so many characters it's like you can spread them across all of these different like storylines and have something for everybody and still keep everything interesting and not be asking the question. Because I think one of the biggest questions for me anyway with a lot of like previous Marvel continuity, while things are happening, you're asking yourself, where's this person, where's this person, where's this person, where's this person, and then having Ultron be one villain, having Mephisto be one villain, and then having somebody else be another villain, however many they want to do. Suddenly it's like, oh, well, where's Doctor Strange? Oh, well, he's fighting Mephisto. Where's the Guardians? They're out in space fighting Galactus. Like, we know where everybody is. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody's doing something. So I think that's kind of why I want Ultron more than anything, because I want...
Yeah. I mean, it's
want
very
multiple villains.
very easily done for them right now to do something like that, because you could have Cataract be Ultron. When someone blows a hole in the multiverse, that multiverse portal or hole or whatever could lead to the hell plane where Mephisto is, and we see a shadowy figure of Mephisto in that portal or in that rip in the multiverse. And like, I mean, we got Monica, who's probably going to go do stuff with Captain Marvel because they have a beef, and then we'll get her going out on her own thing. Like, it's very possible for them to do that, and it makes me excited for this Friday to get here.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think best case scenario is like Marvel just like dumps the bucket on our heads. Like, it's just like everything that they have that they're setting up, they're just gonna dump all of it. Like, open up as many storylines as you want, drop as many like characters or like new plot lines as humanly possible. I think if you're gonna like oversaturate, like, this is the time to do it. Like, this Friday, go all out. Just I don't care if it's just a shotgun of ideas. Like, just do it. There's no way to screw it up. I feel like maybe in a way you screw it up by doing too little, because it feels like with this being the first like Marvel property to come out in over a year, it's like it needs to end strong, and it needs to set up the rest of the universe, for our next phase of content. So they got to come out swinging on this finale, and there's nothing to suggest that they won't.
Right.
They've been killing it so far.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I think we've been talking for quite a bit. So, as always, like, share, subscribe, keep listening. We appreciate the views. We appreciate any comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know your theories on how this massive show is going to end. And as always, we'll see you next week. So, bye.
Bye.
Later.